I'm so excited to share with you this morning a few things. We're going to get into my message, but so much has happened already that I don't even know where to begin. And I'll start with simply last night. I want to share a testimony. It's still in process, but it's something I want to share because we were going to have an opportunity to pray with this individual. Last night, I had a gentleman call me on my phone. I'm not even sure how he got my number because I don't think my number is on the website. I know the main church number is, but not my cell phone. But somehow he got my cell phone, and which is fine. But he called me and he said, "Hey, I'm working a job, but I need a place to park my car for a couple of weeks until I can get paid in a couple of weeks and things like that." And I said, his name is John. And I said, "Well, John," I said, I'd like to, you can stay tonight," which this was yesterday. "You can stay tonight. And I'll be at the church about 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'd like to meet you and kind of get to talk with you." And I said, "It's not just my decision to make on something like this, that I want to connect." And so when I got to church this morning, John was already standing outside and letting the sun kind of warm him up, I guess. And I greeted him. We brought him in. I picked up some breakfast for him and got to sharing and talking and kind of getting to know who he was in his situation, and we have a food pantry, so I thank you all. Many of you all give regularly to the food pantry. That's what it's for. Gave him some things that he could quickly, easily open up and eat, and got to talking with him, and then he shared how his car has some needing some work on it, but just this where he was at. And I said, "John, I can't. As a smaller fellowship, I can't just say, okay, here, go stay at this hotel for the next 2 weeks, or, there's some limitations perhaps, but there is no limits with God." But I said, if you can come at any given time or stay or whatever, I said, I don't know what God can do. And so he had to leave for work. Before he left, I prayed with him. And I said, "John, give me a call call me back this afternoon sometime, and I'll be able to talk a little bit more." And so that was the conversation. John left around 9:45 or 10 o'clock or so. And here we are today. And then this morning, I am sharing this story to Gerald. Where's Gerald? There's Gerald. I'm not wearing my glasses right now. And as I'm sharing this story to Gerald, there is a young woman sitting about halfway back or standing over there listening to our conversation. It was just an open conversation. And she walks up to me and she says, "John, do you know John?" I said, "Well, no, I don't know him." And she said, "You know what? I've got a place for him to stay." And this is the first, well, Karen says she came to a conference here about 6 years ago. But this was the first Sunday that she has come here to this service in this church. And let me tell you what. Do you think it was a coincidence that John called this church? Do you think it was a coincidence that Karen decided to show up this morning? I mean, this is how God works. This is how He operates. Trusting Him, and I was at a place, there's John. Okay, Lord, we're going to pray about this. How are you going to move? What are you going to do? This is ways that God works on our behalf when we cannot work on our own. And this isn't the only time this week that God worked in a really neat or mysterious and profound way. I was driving to a job site one of the days this afternoon, or one of the days last week, and I passed by a house in my neighborhood. I was just a few blocks from my house, and I looked over and I saw a woman as I was driving past, and I immediately recognized her. It was somebody that I hadn't seen in 6, 7, 8 years. And as I passed by, it dawned on me, wait a minute, I know that woman. And I thought, wow, that's odd. That's really strange coincidence. And like, why is she over here? It's like there was a construction van, like she was working or something in their yard. And I was almost going to just dismiss it and go on when I felt, oh, wait a minute. I just really felt that the Lord tugging on me, saying, no, you need to come back around and just stop and say hi to her. So, okay, so I turn around, I go back through my neighborhood and come back around, and I get up and I start pulling my window down, rolling my window down, and I look at this woman that's coming towards my car, and it's not the woman I saw. It didn't look anything like her. And so in that moment, I didn't know what to, like, I was like literally, it was not her at all. And the second time around, I knew that now. And then I didn't know what to do, and I just was like, are you, and I said this girl's name, and I knew it wasn't her, but I just had to ask because I didn't know what else to do, roll my window and take off like some, crazy guy. And then she said, no. I said, oh, I'm sorry. I thought I knew you. And then I was like, I was out of there. But as I was leaving the second time now, first I thought was, that woman didn't look anything like who, and it wasn't like I was like way off down around the yonder. I mean, I was, we have smaller streets and the house was, when I saw her, she wasn't 25 yards from my Jeep when I drove by it. Like, she wasn't that far away. And I was like, how did I get this one girl's, but yet it wasn't her at all. And so I'm processing this, and then God says, I got your attention, now pray for her. This was the woman who I thought I saw. I said, okay. And again, I've had no contact with this person for 7 or 8 years. And so I said, okay. So I just began to pray. And I began to pray. I said, Lord, I don't know where she's at or what's going on in her life, but you've laid it upon my heart. You got my attention. It was just like he caused me to see her, even though it wasn't her, to come back around. And again, I came so close to just going on. That was the first little act of obedience that I had to do. Anyone know that we're always on a schedule? We've always got somewhere to go and need to be there yesterday kind of thing. So there's always, when God gets our attention, when he prompts us, generally, more times than not, it's going to be an inconvenience. It just is. Where then at that time, you have to pause and say, you know what? God's agenda, God's master plan for my life is more important than my plan, or what I think it is. Why do I say that? Because one, he's God, and two, I know that he can see the future. He knows what's best, and it will behoove me. It will be more a blessing to me if I just put my agenda in the passenger seat and allow God to move. And if I don't, there's going to be those consequences. So it's a trust that God is in control of our life. And so I had to pause in that one moment and say, okay, I had to come back around. I was pulling a trailer, and it was inconvenient. But no, okay, Lord, I'll do that. And then to see this woman come down, and it wasn't her at all, caused me to pause, and then God said, I've got your attention. I said, wow, God, you've never done that to me before. Like, you never made me see somebody that wasn't that person and then come back around. And I said, wow. So I began to pray. And just a few minutes as I'm driving to my next place, later that day, this particular woman, I don't have any way of getting a hold of her, but I know her sister. Her sister's like one of those Facebook friends that they're just kind of there somehow, and you never talk to them, but they're one of your Facebook friends. And so this was kind of one of those friends. And so I messaged her and I said, is your sister okay? That's all I asked. And later that day she replied and she said, it's interesting that you would ask. She's been admitted to a mental health facility, and she's going through a lot of hard things. And then I replied to her, I simply said, God is got this. he prompted it upon me, and I just threw a little, messaging, shared briefly about how he got my attention out of all the people in the world, out of everything. That's who he put into my periphery. That's who he put upon my heart to pray for. And that's how God operates. That's one of the ways how God operates. Where she is now, she may be in a mental health institute. But that doesn't keep God from reaching out and bringing people in order to pray on her behalf. In order to pray that God would do things. And this is when I say we can limit God. Just like your faith and your trust in God will determine how much God can work in your life. It also goes when it comes to our prayers, that somehow the immovable, all-powerful God has chosen to interact in our world according to our faith and according to our obedience. And there are things, the reason there's suffering, and the reason there's a lot of things in this world, it's not because God's evil, because he's not. Some of it is just simply due to the fallen nature, that there is a corruption that God will one day restore and one day fix, and he will make all things right. But right now, we're not there yet. But now, he has chosen that he's only going to be as involved as his children are obedient and by faith walking in his will for their life. And I believe there's also times that our prayers will go unanswered or have gone unanswered, not because God doesn't answer prayer, but because he does. But at times it was due through God was put it upon somebody else in a shame or in a fashion or form to do something, and they disobeyed, and then there were the consequences that fell out as a result. That it is important that when we hear the voice of God, that when we hear him speaking to us, and remember, he didn't speak to me, oh, go pray for this person. It wasn't an audible voice. I simply saw somebody that I thought was her, and it wasn't. And then in that moment, I had to pause and say, God, am I finally reached the age where this is starting to happen? Lord, please tell me there's more. Tell me that this, that there was a moment where I had to pause, and this is what living by faith is all about. It is a day-by-day, at times moment-by-moment decision that we have to pause and get into a conversation, start up a conversation with God, and say, Lord, fill this in for me. Give me some direction here. And then when he gives us direction, we have to respond in obedience. We have to react to that. And so